What up, guys? This is another true crime video. And honestly, I truly feel that these are the most scary serial killers I've ever looked up. These people, they weren't sexually driven. They weren't revenge driven. They slaughtered people the most brutal way just for fun. Propatrosk maniacs. 3 people went on trial, but one of them was not necessarily part of the murders. No, he hung out with them a lot, but he didn't participate in the murders. There was 2 people, and the other one was like the guy who usually was mostly responsible for like the murders and stuff. He was like the guy who was always holding the weapon and stuff and killing the person, while the other guy was just like videotaping. I'm not saying that like the guy who was always holding the camera didn't participate. He did participate in the murders. Here's where we're gonna start. First of all, this is not gonna be a deep dive. I recommend Eleanor Neale's video. She's made like a 3-part series of this case and stuff like that, and it's very specific. So, I recommend going to her channel. So, Igor Saprangyak and Victor Sayenko. They were 2 people that met, and they basically became friends. They always got into trouble ever since their earlier days, like beat up kids and steal their bikes and stuff like that. But what is really fascinating about this is that these kids weren't even grown in like really poor families. Like they weren't in poverty or anything. Igor's dad was a pilot and even flew the president of Ukraine. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I think that's what I read. He was a pilot, and then Victor's father was a lawyer, an attorney. So it's like, you know, these kids weren't like freaking brought up in like poverty and horrible circumstances. They were raised in like high class, middle class, you know, families and stuff like that. Prior to this, they met a 3rd friend. His name was Alexander. So they basically became a trio, 3 amigos, you know, and they would like rob people. And when I say rob, like rob people, they would put like the ski masks on, they would have the guns. Victor got a job as a security guard. Igor got a job as an unlicensed taxi driver because his father bought him a car and he was using that car. But you know, most of the time that he was using that car, it was to rob people. They were kind of like a team and stuff like that. I kind of feel like they felt like they were, they started feeling like, you know, they were invincible. Like nothing could ever happen to them. Nobody could ever stop them because they knew that they had fears. All 3 of them. They had fears. Both Igor and Victor, they were terribly afraid of heights. Alexander was terribly afraid of blood. He was the most squeamish of the 3. So what they did was Igor and Victor would literally like go up to their balcony and kind of hang themselves like by their feet, and then just like stay there for such a long time until they felt like they weren't afraid anymore. And then meanwhile, because Alexander was so afraid of blood, or he was so squeamish when it came to blood, the guys grabbed stray dogs, stray cats, stray animals, and just kill them. And then they would make Alexander kind of like, you know, look at the blood or touch the blood. And this was their way to cope with their phobia. After they did this, they kind of realized like they had a very sadistic nature in them. Hanging dogs, cats, stuff like that. And then there is one story, one of them that pisses me off so much. And it was taped but only the jury was able to see it. I think this video is like long lost, but it was basically they found a white little kitten, nailed the kitten to a cross that they like made, and then started shooting, videotaping it. It was in their garage. They were laughing about it. And you know what? I hope these people freaking burn alive in hell. This was just the beginning of it. Eventually, they wanted to move on to humans. They one day decide to go out on a walk in the middle of the night. A young girl, or I mean, not a girl, she was a woman, but you know, she was still young. As soon as she walked right by them, they turn around. Igor beats her in the face with the hammer and instantly kills her. So, you would think that they would think, like a normal person would be like, oh my god, what did I just do? Like, this was wrong. No. 1 hour later, they were looking for somebody else, and they find a homeless man, and they kill him the same exact way, basically smashing their face with a hammer. For the next month, you would every single day see like one body, the next day 2 bodies, the next day 3 bodies, the next day 1 body. They were doing this for an entire month. And it's kind of crazy because it's like, I feel like these 2 serial killers felt very invincible. It's like they didn't think that they could ever get caught, because one of their victims was a 14-year-old child, and I think that was the youngest of the people that they've killed. But the thing about this 14-year-old kid was that he was with his friend, and they tried to kill both of them, but one of them was able to escape. You would think that like after one of the people you try to kill escaped, you would stop, but no, they didn't. They continued. And what breaks my heart is that this kid, who the kid's friend who died, he was being blamed for his murder, and he was being beaten by police, even though this was just a young kid. But anyways, you would think that they would be like, oh shit, you know, like, oh my god, you know, somebody knows what we look like, somebody knows who we are, they're gonna report us. No, they continued, because later on, one of their victims, and this would be the most infamous murder of their killing spree, the 3 guys, 1 hammer murder, because it's all over the internet, it is so easy to find, and you just see the brutality. You see just how freaking sadistic and evil and violent these 2 kids were. Or, I mean, they were adults at this point, but, you know, they were still very young. For 7 minutes, you see a guy laying on the ground. He's probably confused. He has no idea what's about to happen. Okay, so I'm about to give you a reenactment of what exactly happens in the video. You know, just so like that you don't have to see it and stuff like that, you know. He has like, they put some cardboard on his chest, and then he throws it up like that, and then he goes like this, and then all of a sudden, you know, the hammer goes like, I think it goes like right here in the middle of his head. It goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all of a sudden, Victor, because Igor is the one with the hammer, Victor kind of zooms into his face, and then you just see blood gushing like all over and stuff like that, and his face is basically kind of like torn off, completely torn off. And basically the next few minutes, Victor kind of grabbing a screwdriver and stabbing him in the stomach, and then Victor starts like stabbing him in the eyes. And you know, fast forward, blah blah blah, Victor's basically saying like, just kill him already, just kill him, because he wasn't dying. You know, he was like suffering. This, for the whole 7 minutes, he was alive with his face like completely ripped off and being stabbed in the stomach and his eyes being gouged out. Victor was like, okay, just kill him already. And so Igor like hits him in the face with the hammer one more time, and then he finally dies. And then they go back to their car, you know, they clean themselves up and stuff like that, and then they have the audacity to go back to the body and take pictures of them. Like I feel like even Jeffrey Dahmer had way more morals than them, because at least Jeffrey tried to drug his victims and make sure that they didn't feel any pain or were unconscious. These people wanted to make sure that their victims were conscious and felt every single little bit of pain. So that's the reason why I say that I feel like these are one of the most evil, scariest serial killers I've ever come across. Okay, fast forward, more people were killed. In the end of the month, 21 people were already dead. In the end of the day, how they were caught, the murders weren't connected in the beginning. But then, little by little, the kid who survived and gave a description of, there was like a blonde guy and a guy with black hair, and they looked like they were like young. And then there were some people hiding in a tent who witnessed the whole thing, but they were too scared to like even get out. They put two and two together, and they realized that all these murders are connected. They didn't know that you could track somebody down with cell phones. And once they were trying to pawn a cell phone in a thrift store, once they turned it on, the police knew exactly who the killers were and where they were. And that's when they got caught. And Alexander, he'd never participated in the murders, but he knew all about them. And he was responsible for a lot of the robberies and stuff like that. And the reason why Alexander wasn't part of the murders, didn't participate in the murders, obviously because he was like very squeamish with blood. So he's like, nah, you know what, you guys go ahead and do that. I don't want any part of it, but you know what, I'm not going to say anything. So, you know what, to me, he was just as guilty. All right, prison in America, so many people get spoiled. I wonder what prison is like in Ukraine. So that's basically the case, you know. They were found guilty. 21 people died, were brutally murdered. And I've never seen Ukraine the same way before. But yeah, if you guys know more about this case that I haven't mentioned, please leave me a comment and stuff like that. Like I said, if you want to know more detailed facts about this case, I truly recommend Eleanor Neale's video, or, you know, videos about this series and stuff like that, or about this case. So yeah, I mean, if you watch this, thank you. So yeah, thanks.